The story is set in the fictional German town of Wisborg in 1838. We meet Thomas Hutter, a cheerful young real estate clerk, and his wife Ellen, who live a simple, happy life. Hutter's employer, Herr Nock, sends him on a business trip far away to Transylvania. Nock has found a new client, the mysterious Count Orlok, who wants to buy a house in Wisborg, right across from Hutter's own home. Hutter, eager to please, kisses his worried wife goodbye and heads out, unaware of the danger that awaits. Hutter's journey to Orlok's castle feels like stepping into a nightmare. Locals at a Transylvanian inn get silent at the mere mention of Orlok's name. Despite their warnings, Hutter continues on his journey. Along the way, he finds an old book titled The Book of the Vampires, which he laughs off as superstitious nonsense, but he keeps it anyway, a hint of what's to come. As night falls, his carriage driver refuses to go further, so Hutter proceeds alone through the dark woods until a ghostly coach appears to pick him up. The coach also seemed to move unnaturally fast, gliding through the night. It delivers Hutter to a looming castle in the Carpathian Mountains, where Count Orlok finally makes his appearance. Count Orlok is gaunt and corpse-like, with a bald head, pointed ears, a hooked nose, and claws for hands. Orlok welcomes Hutter to his castle, but as Hutter sits down to dinner, the Count shows his true nature. Hutter accidentally cuts his thumb with a bread knife, and Orlok lunges, trying to suck the blood from the wound before Hutter pulls away in alarm. Hutter is unnerved, but he tries to stay polite. Later that night, Hutter finds fresh puncture marks on his neck. Mosquito bites, he tells himself. The next evening, as Hutter and Orlok finalize the property sale, Hutter shows the Count a small photo of his beloved Ellen. Orlok's eyes widen, and he says, "Your wife has such a beautiful neck." Hutter finally begins to suspect that something is very wrong with his host. He remembers that book about vampires and starts reading it in his guest room. It describes undead creatures called Nosferatu, who sleep by day and thirst for blood at night. Hutter's creeping dread is confirmed when the clock strikes midnight and the door to his room swings open by itself. Orlok enters the room with his eyes wide open and fangs bared. Terrified, Hutter cowers under his bed covers. Orlok leaves him alive, for now. Far away in Wisborg, Ellen is shown to have a kind of psychic connection. She sleepwalks onto her balcony in a trance and cries out her husband's name, as if sensing his peril. Her distress actually seems to momentarily stop Orlok from harming Hutter, implying some mysterious bond between Ellen and the Count. Hutter awakens to a deserted castle. Count Orlok is nowhere to be seen during daylight. Venturing into the crypt, Hutter finds a coffin with Count Orlok inside, deathly still. Horrified, Hutter now knows the truth. Orlok is a vampire. He watches as Orlok later loads up a wagon with coffins, including one in which the Count himself sleeps, and leaves for Wisborg. The Count is headed straight for Hutter's hometown, and for Ellen. Desperate to warn his wife, Hutter escapes the castle, after some stressful moments and an injury during his getaway, and races homeward. Meanwhile, Orlok's journey unfolds in one of the film's most famous sequences. The coffins are transported by raft and then loaded onto a sailing ship named the Empusa. As the ship sets sail, the crew is baffled by odd occurrences, like sailors getting sick and disappearing one by one. We soon see why. Count Orlok is on board, hiding in one of his crates. From the coffin, the vampire rises to prey on the crew. He lurks around the deck at night, his tall, skeletal figure striking terror into the men. By the time the ghost ship arrives in Wisborg's harbor, no one is left alive. The captain's log, found later, speaks of an unknown plague on board. Orlok simply walks off the ship with one of his coffins, unobserved, and takes up residence in his new house, which happens to face Hutter and Ellen's home across the street. Now the horror really comes home. Wisborg is soon stricken with death. People collapse with strange marks on their neck, and the town elders blame it on a mysterious plague, helped by the swarm of rats Orlok brought on the ship. Panic spreads through the town. In the chaos, Hutter's boss, Nock, who had been committed to an asylum because of how manic he was behaving before, escapes custody. It's hinted that Nock was under Orlok's influence from afar, like Renfield and Dracula. The townsfolk, needing someone to blame for the plague, form an angry mob and chase Nock, thinking he's behind the evil afflicting Wisborg. Nock is eventually caught and imprisoned again, but the real threat, Count Orlok, still prowls free. Back at home, Ellen has been anxiously awaiting her husband's return. Hutter finally makes it back to Weisborg, weak and exhausted, and Ellen learns firsthand about the terror now in their town. She finds and reads the Book of Vampires that Hutter brought from Transylvania. From it, she discovers a possible way to destroy the Nosferatu. Only a woman without sin, who freely gives her blood to the vampire and keeps him by her side until the first cock crow, can break the curse. In other words, a pure-hearted woman must sacrifice herself to distract the vampire until sunlight kills him. Ellen realizes with dread that she is the woman who must make this sacrifice. That night, Ellen puts her plan into action. She sends Hutter away under the pretense of fetching Professor Bulwer, a scholar who has been advising the people on the plague. Once her husband is gone, Ellen opens the windows and invites Count Orlok into their home, deliberately placing herself in the vampire's path. The Nosferatu cannot resist such an offer. He sneaks into Hutter's house and finds Ellen alone in her bedroom, bathed in moonlight. Orlok approaches Ellen's bed. Engrossed in feeding on Ellen, Orlok fails to notice the approach of dawn. At the very moment he is about to kill Ellen, the rooster crows, the first light of daybreak. Suddenly, the rays of the rising sun stream through the window and strike Count Orlok. The vampire freezes, his clawed hand raised in shock. In an instant, he vanishes in a puff of smoke, destroyed by sunlight. Count Orlok, the undead terror, is finally dead, doomed by the first sunrise he's seen in centuries. Hutter, with Professor Bulwer, arrives just in time to embrace Ellen as she takes her last breath. She has given her life to save her husband and her town. The evil is vanquished, but at a terrible cost. The final haunting image of the film is Orlok's castle in Transylvania, shown in ruins. The plot of Nosferatu closely parallels Bram Stoker's Dracula, but with altered names and a few changes. The film's genius lies in how it tells this story visually, through expressive shadows, eerie atmosphere, and the otherworldly performance of Max Schreck as Orlok. It's time to unpack why Nosferatu, released in 1922, mattered a lot in film history. When Nosferatu premiered in 1922, audiences had never seen anything quite like it. This was the first true vampire film to achieve iconic status, and it essentially created the template for all cinematic horror that followed. Earlier vampire films existed, an obscure 1921 Dracula adaptation, for example. But Nosferatu is the earliest one that survived and the first to have a massive, lasting impact. Its importance can't be overstated. It set the template for the genre of horror film. One of Nosferatu's biggest contributions was to vampire lore itself. In Stoker's original Dracula novel, sunlight weakens the vampire but doesn't kill him. Nosferatu changed that forever. Director F.W. Murnau introduced the idea that sunlight is lethal to vampires, using it as the climactic device to destroy Count Orlok. This was new at the time, and it proved so effective and iconic that almost every vampire movie or story since has adopted it. Likewise, Orlok's rat-like feral appearance offered an alternative to the aristocratic, well-spoken Dracula image. Visually, Nosferatu was a masterpiece of atmosphere. Since it was a silent film, everything had to be conveyed through imagery. The film is filled with unforgettable images that still define spooky in cinema. Orlok's tall shadow on the stairway, his stiff-backed rise from the coffin, his eerie figure carrying a coffin across a foggy street. These visuals establish the language of horror movies. Directors learned that what you don't see can be as frightening as what you do. The film's gothic look and feel remain amazing till today. The slow, deliberate pacing, the expressionistic use of light and dark, and the exaggerated silent era acting all combine to create an otherworldly experience. Critically, Nosferatu is now regarded as one of the most influential films ever made. It showed filmmakers how horror could be artistic and how to create suspense visually. Without Nosferatu, there might be no Universal Dracula, no classic Frankenstein, perhaps no horror genre as we know it. Nosferatu demonstrated that nightmares can be captured on film. A full century after it first chilled audiences, Nosferatu remains a triumph of atmosphere and imagination. Its shadow continues to loom over the horror genre, reminding us that some monsters never truly die. They just get rediscovered by each new generation of film lovers. If you've never seen this silent classic, consider giving it a watch, preferably late at night for maximum effect. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. This channel will be dedicated to recapping and discussing classic movies. If you are into the classics, be sure to subscribe. I will try to drop 2 videos weekly. This is the first video of the series. Are there any movies that you want to see a video on? Drop in the comments. See you in the next video.